feet. So it forces me to get very good at controlling my breathing without having to think about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
You can do skipping where you focus on your breathing specifically, as like a mental exercise, almost like a state of meditation in a way.
yeah, yeah, I got it.
But it's really good for your breathing.
Okay, okay. So, first of all, how old are you? At what age did you start jumping rope? Like, did you wake up one morning when you were like 5 year old and you decided, okay, I'm gonna be a jump rope coach and master?
No, the story for that, we've taken like 15, 20 minutes to cover, but it's kind of come out of nowhere, but like in a very slow, like not noticing it kind of way. So I knew that skipping was good. And I knew boxers did it for a good reason. It burned a lot of calories. It was great for their coordination. And as a kid, I could not skip. I couldn't do more than one skip. And I remember my first skipping rope when I was 20. I used to do like lots of weighted calisthenics and stuff and like body weight training. I didn't like the idea of going to the gym. So I bought like a leather rope. It was like the worst possible rope I could have bought as a beginner. And I can remember struggling to get over it like once or twice in a row. I could not pull that rope around me. I just did not have any like spatial awareness of getting it around me. It was awful. I remember. And then yeah, it's kind of, I don't know if you want me to save the rest of this for on the call, but yeah, it kind of spawned out of that, and it's kind of like spiraled to where it is now. And every time something's happened, like becoming a coach, becoming a PT, beginning to manufacture my own ropes, everything's kind of like just escalated out of nothing. It's kind of been quite a journey in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, yeah, I see. Even because before like going on your profile, I didn't think that there exists like the jump rope coach, because usually I always saw jumping rope as a kind of warm up or coordination exercise, and that's it. Instead, there are like so many drills and so many possibilities that you can have with just a rope on your room.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
it's an entire underground sport that's been around for about 50 years or so. And yeah, there's coaches that will teach on teams to either, and there's two main disciplines. We can talk about this on the call if you want, but there's two main disciplines in jump rope, which is freestyle, which is more focused on performance and coordination. So just like gymnastics and skateboarding kind of merged together. And then you have more like track events, which are speed, which would be more what you would probably want to get out of jump rope, which is where you'll do speed events where you do as many steps as you can, one step per round of the rope. You only count your right foot because otherwise it's really hard to keep
yeah.
that pace when you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's like running on the spot. And the cardiovascular systems and the energy systems that are used in different events parallel nicely with 100-meter race, 200-meter race, 400-meter race. So you do 15-second speed, which is equivalent to a 100-meter sprint.
Yeah.
And you got 30-second speed, which is about 200. And most competitions will do 15-second, 30-second. Sometimes they'll do a 45-second speed, and then they'll do like a 3-minute speed. So you'll basically try to sprint on the spot for 3 minutes straight.
Wow.
So your cardiovascular system, your efficiency in being how to control your hands and your feet in time has to be so insanely good. And then you'll have things like double dutch, where it's almost like a relay. You have two people turning double dutch ropes, going as fast as possible, and people going in and out, taking it in turns, almost like passing on the baton.
Wow.
So there's a whole sport to be discovered.
Yeah, by the way, I've already started recording, so we are live. And
Oh,
so I was thinking, because I've never saw these competitions, like where are they? Like,
how do you mean? So yeah, they're held every year. There's a couple of different organizing bodies that manage them. And so they all have their own variations of different types of events that they hold. And so the teams will turn up normally by country once you get to the international level, or you can do national level where different states and different parts of a country will compete against each other, which is especially the case in America where they have like the grand nationals. So you have different teams in different states that will compete, and they'll compete on speed or they'll compete on freestyle.
okay, okay. Speed is really interesting to me, at least. But have you seen maybe on your like clients like transfer or on like sprints or something? Maybe you coach athletes like sprinters or maybe runners of 3,000 meters, and you do let them like doing jumping rope with like certain type of speed sprints, something like that, and then you
I
see their
haven't trained
performance.
many. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, and you see their performances like increase.
I haven't personally trained many like high level athletes during this lockdown, so I've not been able to directly or anecdotally see any carryover. But I'm aware that is a carryover.
Okay.
If I even just take my own personal anecdotal experience, when I used to train at the gym and I would do a lot of upper body training to kind of compensate for the lower body focus that jump rope has. Whenever I'd then do like a lower body workout and I'd just say squats, the amount of volume I would be able to do, despite not really being trained or seasoned for that volume, was quite significant. So I could, after a couple of sets of warm up, quite comfortably say squat my body weight or more, having not spent any time periodizing getting to a level of that level, because the amount of volume I do with jumping and the bounding ballistic exercise gives me enough power in my legs to be able to just carry over.
Okay. So jumping rope is the only lower body exercise that you do.
It for a long time it pretty much was, yeah. Before, I know I said I used to do like kind of calisthenics and body weight training. Before that, I literally would do like body squats, pistol squats, that sort of movement, because I used to enjoy body movement.
Okay.
And then when I transitioned to jump rope, it would just be jump rope. So double unders, triple unders, quadruple unders, speed step, any sort of body movement where the legs are getting heavily involved.
Okay.
I just wouldn't do much other leg exercises. I have a really close friend of mine who I train with at the gym, and we would pair up for upper body exercises. So I had like a friend to go with, and whenever I'd join him for a day of like leg day, I could always kind of keep up with him, if so, for want of a better word, despite not really training my legs in any general capacity.
Okay. Okay. That's great, because I was thinking based on my experience that jumping rope is great for calves development, while the quads, glutes, and hamstring, like it didn't have much impact. But maybe because I only do like basics exercise, like jumping rope,
Yeah.
like old style.
So the glutes to a large extent, you probably won't get much volume because they're going to be more of a stabilizer muscle more than anything else. They're not really going to get much motion. You're not getting your body should stay pretty neutral, especially your hips. You're not going to have much hip extension or flexion, so they won't get any work. Your hamstrings probably won't get much work either, because as opposed to like a deadlift or that kind of hinging movement, any kind of bend in your hips, you're going to have a slight bend in your knee. And because the hamstring's biarticular, if it shortens at one end, it lengthens at the other. So you don't really get any. You'll definitely get a lot of fatigue in them from the eccentric movement of resisting the downward motion of the ballistic exercise. You're not going to train them though. The quads though do tend to get quite well developed in a lot of jumpers because of the constant knee extension. So although it's a very small range of motion, because of the power of exploding up and bounding up rather than jumping up, they do get quite a lot of work. And it is known for, when there are like overuse injuries in jump rope, it tends to be that so the quads might be overactive because they're so heavily used in that short burst, and you'll get like one quad muscle out of the four that's more active because of the fact your legs are so close together compared to like far apart, for example.
Yeah.
So the quads get a lot more work than you would think, and then the majority of it is in the calf and the Achilles tendon. So those two muscles kind of together what produces a lot of that power.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. Like in my experience, I saw basically since I was 12, 12, 14 years old, maybe like I had an afternoon in which I had to study for like 4 hours, 5 hours. So I didn't have time to like have a proper training session. So what I did was like 5 minutes jumping rope every now and then. And
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that I never get injured in my ankles. Like even I can put like my foot in a weird way, but my ankles are really strong. And that's, I think, because of the jumping rope is the only exercise that I did specifically, if it
Yeah.
makes sense. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
from an injury prevention standpoint, I think jumping rope for athletes is great. What's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing like standard kind of like the more basic skills where you're doing a lot of simple footwork and you're keeping your feet quite close to the floor and you're not doing any kind of the crazier tricks, because you're very stationary, unlike a lot of other sports, there's not many variables at play, right? So in a lot of contact sports, you have something you're coming into contact with. If you're doing things like gymnastics, you have a bar that you have direct contact with. Whereas when you do jump rope, the only contact you have is with the floor, and the floor's extremely stable position. There's nothing that's going to move.
Yeah.
So as long as you're staying stationary with it, there's very little to cause you harm, so long as you're not moving your body in a way that's going to produce a problem, right? So it's very good for not getting an injury out of. And majority of people who have injuries in jump rope are for one of two reasons. Like from a freestyle point of view, either overuse, which would be no different from any other sport really, or from trying new freestyle skills that are outside of their current reach of capability. But that's not really going to apply to your situation. So you only have one thing, which is overuse. And if you don't overuse it, no injuries.
Okay, yeah. And about that, how long is your training session? Like, all your clients, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours?
So it really varies person to person. So, and it depends on their goals. So when I used to train, because I did it a lot as for workout, I could quite comfortably be there for sort of 3 or 4 hours, and I'd be doing resistance training plus jump rope. So I would do a lot. But to bear in mind, because I've studied all of the different movement patterns and the different freestyle skills, I would spend that 2 or 3 hours going over multiple different skill categories and skill families and practicing lots of different stuff. So it would be really purposeful practice as opposed to just sort of throwing paint at a wall and seeing what hits. When it comes to clients, when they don't have that necessarily that amount of time, they spend less time jumping than you might think, because one of the things I focus on as a coach is purposeful practice and training for efficiency. So they spend a lot of time at the beginning focusing on things that seem really basic, and then they build to a point where they don't have to spend much time learning the new skills. From a fitness point of view, I always recommend people jump for 15 minutes to an hour on a daily basis if they're going to jump on a daily basis, and try not to overdo it, because it's very easy to overdo it with jump rope.
Yeah.
So
And what's your recommendation for athletes? Like, in your opinion, if you have to sell a jumping rope as a sport to an athlete, what's like the best top 3, 4 benefits that you would say to incentivize?
okay, so the number one benefit, which we've kind of specifically covered so far, is just the power and strength is carryover you're going to get in your legs, because of how much more powerful it's going to make them, because of how explosive in nature it is. So even if I had an athlete who could relatively jump rope and they just needed to get power as a carryover, I just get them training double unders and triple unders, just getting a high intensity, getting them used to being able to get a good elevation. So like if it's a basketball player, getting them to have a higher vertical, jump rope's going to specifically really help with that, for example. If the other kind of, we had 3 other benefits to mention, the next one probably be like we said about the cardiovascular and being able to sustain a longer period of time of jumping rope and being able to keep that pace up. And because of the rhythm base of it, it's very easy to actually put that into a quantifiable amount of what song BPM do you play to, and having that variable. The last 2 would probably be more like the coordination and memory skills that it provides. So from a coordination point of view, because of all the different body parts that have to move independently, so all two legs, 2 arms, behind you, in front of you, left, right, back and forth, it's a really big brain workout. And that means that you can be much more creative, you can be much more agile and stable in awkward positions. And so your proprioceptive skill is the biggest benefit that it provides, beyond simple exercise. And I compare it a lot to music, where music is one of the few activities that uses almost every sense at the same time. So you use your hearing, your sight, your feeling. Like when you write with a pen, you don't listen to the sound of the pen to tell you writing correctly, whereas when you music, you listen, you sound, you feel. And that's the same with jump rope. You can hear the sound of the rope, you can feel the tension in the air. It's using a lot more senses than most sports would, so it'll really get your brain working out. And then from a memory point of view, it really helps me pick up new skills in other parts of my life much quicker, because I'm used to understanding things in a system in the way that skills like certain jump rope skills break down in systems, and they have sort of like laws applied to them, like maths and kind of like laws of what you can and can't do. It gets you used to thinking about other things in the same sort of avenue. So it helps you be more methodical, planning in future. So when people want to do like freestyle combinations and stuff, even if it's just double unders and having those sort of patterns, it helps you build up really good movement patterns and planning ahead, so you don't have that. It helps you with that muscle memory. Probably a good way of explaining that.
Okay, so many reasons to do jumping rope.
Many reasons, yeah, and it's cheap. Like you don't need the gym, you don't need expensive equipment, so it's also cheap. That's a fifth. I gave you a free one there.
And I was thinking about the proprioception. Do you ever do jumping rope barefoot? Because I saw some of your videos, and like your shoes are, how do you call it? Like minimalistic, like with no like big.
Yeah.
Like,
So I don't personally jump barefooted, just because I do a lot of quite the higher impact skills. So it's more of a risk. And I actually personally have suffered from a overuse injury many years ago from having quite flat-footed shoes and doing an insane amount of volume in a short period of time. I know which videos you're referring to, and they actually happened to be when I had one pair of decent trainers that had broken, and then another pair that I was waiting to arrive, and it was just a little bit of the interim pair, if that were. So, but it would be worth noting that that type of shoe would probably not be recommended for higher impact stuff until your Achilles tendons and your soleus are more conditioned to the impact. So you're not going to cause an injury because of that.
okay.
But so I know a lot of people do like to try to build up strength and conditioning by jumping barefoot. So it's kind of like a fine balance of being careful, like in a lot of sports, of doing things that could be harmful, but doing them to just enough of a threshold that they're not going to be harmful, because they're building up tolerance and like conditioning to it rather than just going over the mark. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Do you know about a YouTube channel, The Pioneer? Is in Bournemouth. We talk about like proprioception and superhuman performance, and he recommended to do single leg jumping rope and barefoot training. So he's like totally he agrees with like this kind of training barefoot. That's why I was.
Yeah.
And about single leg, I my goal in life, no, I mean my goal for jumping rope is a single leg double under, which for me is so difficult. Like my strategy right now is to reach 100 repetitions with single leg, which is quite tough, honestly, especially for my.
So single under, single leg. So just like one
Yes.
round over. Yep.
Yeah, yes, and then I'm doing double unders like with double leg, and I can do like 7, 8 in a row. And I'm thinking, okay, if I can improve in these two, I can have a carryover and being able to do single leg double unders. That will improve like
Well,
performance in football a lot.
if we apply some kind of intuitive logic, when you're doing a weighted squat, right? Let's say you've got 100 kilos on the bar and you weigh 100 kilos, so you've got 200 kilos. You're trying to move through space, and you've got 2 feet. Each foot, give or take a little bit of physics, is carrying 100 kilos each, right? So if you remove 1 foot, you're effectively doubling the load on the 1 foot. And so a double under on 1 foot is the exact same principle, except you now have G-forces increasing the mass that you're jumping at, because as you jump and you come back down, your weight increases on the down. So you're effectively adding more weight to that leg, and then adding more so because it's not only single leg, but you're doing like a double under, which is a much more intense skill. So it's definitely going to have carryover, that then when you go back to having the 2 legs, you're going to be a lot more powerful, or at least more powerful per leg when, say, you're running or sprinting or trying to kick off from something. So if an athlete came to me, they're like, I want to get as strong as possible in the most brutal but effective way, a single leg double under meets those requirements.
Yeah, it makes totally sense. And are you able to do triple under with a single leg?
I can show you right now. I think I haven't tried a strict open. I've done skills where I'm already on one leg and do a triple, where the first part is a swing, where you take off at the same time. So you go 1, 2, 3. I've done that before, so I think I could probably hit a triple. Do you want me to try?
Yeah, why
Like
not?
now? Yeah.
Why not? Why not?
It's not raining outside, so let's go do this.
Yeah,
Let me find out. This will be. I don't genuinely have no idea if this is going to be a terrible embarrassment or a success. So let's find out.
If it's gonna be really, really bad, I can cut this part and this is
No, it's okay. I've got humility. You're all fine. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. If it takes me a few attempts, that might be what happens. Okay, let's put you there.
so single leg
okay?
triple on that, right?
I'm back here. You can see that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, I've got 2 ropes here because I'm actually going to try it with 2 different ropes because one of them is probably going to give me a much higher chance of success. So let's start with the one that's probably not going to make my life easier out of preference. So okay. Oh, almost. Not quite. Let's try a slightly easier rope to probably get this with. This is a slightly thinner rope, so it turns faster. So this one may work.
You did it.
There you go.
You did it. Yeah.
Let's try the other leg, make sure I'm not imbalanced.
Wow. Well done.
Thank you.
So like if you do a squat jump, a box squat in the gym, like how much can you jump? Like 7? Have you ever tried? Just
I haven't tried box jumps in a while, but the thing is with jump rope, because it's a vertical jump, the carryover is not the same because one's a hinge movement, whereas one's a bound. Let me show you. So if I put you here, you can see that shed behind me, right?
yes, I can.
On my videos with the camera angle, you can see how high, what clearance I get with my head on the shed, on the shed there.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
And one of the big mistakes people make when they're learning a double under is they do a box jump. So they'll be jumping and they'll do this. You see my upper body doesn't actually move, so you don't actually get any height.
Okay.
You can get some height, but you're not actually, because your legs are going with you. You've got with motion, which doesn't create actually much energy. Is it one of the simplest laws in dynamics and physics is that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So actually you forcing away from the floor gives you more bound. So actually having a height to actually jump up rather than bring your legs with you. So then when I apply and use the rope as a guide, driving my hands down, getting my hips to come up is going to give me a lot of height compared to the shed. So that, rather than tucking. If I was to tuck, I probably wouldn't get the same height because I actually restricted how high I can go. I'm trying to prevent myself from going any higher.
Got it. Yeah, that's clear.
More often than not, when you see like viral videos of people doing like box jumps, it's more about how high they can bring their legs up to their head. And you'll notice they very rarely get their head much higher than it already is. They just tuck in so tight they can then stand up afterwards. So it looks like they're jumping super high. And unfortunately, they're not jumping that high in comparison. Whereas like if you measure people's vertical heights in, they do this in America when they measure people's vertical heights in like college kids to see what like the average peak is. It's actually, it feels like stupidly low how high people can actually jump. And that's why that training like that for say a basketball player would be a fantastic way for helping them maximize that acceleration to away from the floor.
Okay. So you can easily have a heading tackle against Cristiano Ronaldo and take the ball.
I don't know about that. Obviously, I can go that way. I don't know if I can go that way fast.
Oh yeah. Because Ronaldo is like considered one of the greatest athletes because he can reach, if he jumps, 2 meters and 50 centimeters, something like that. He is 185, 1 meters and 85 centimeters tall. So he's jumping quite a lot. But I think if you can jump that high, you can easily reach that altitude.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if I'd want to butt heads with him though. Like, but maybe I can reach. But
You do 3 hours like split during the day, or you do 3 hours like all together during your workout?
so to be honest, these days I don't train anywhere near the volume I used to because I spend a lot of time coaching.
Okay.
So honestly, most of my volume actually comes from demonstration. So I do a lot of the lower bound exercises and lots of like demonstrating triple unders like that. That sort of stuff is what I spend most of my time doing. So if you accumulated that across a week, I probably do 2 hours a day or an hour a day, maybe more than that. But not all of it's dedicated practice for myself. So I would kind of consider it maintenance for me at this point. I'm not really pushing myself to be better in any given thing other than making sure I'm good enough to demonstrate perfect form, which is still kind of a form of maintenance in a really way. But I spent most of my time when I was training freestyle and training exercises that would build up strength and power, like consecutive triple unders or like frogs and handstands and stuff like that, rather than speed specifically, because speed itself, if you talk to any person, any jump rope athlete, you'll know speed is like the sore subject. No one likes speed because it's so difficult to get right once you get to a certain peak level. And we're talking that, when you do like the 100-meter race, we both know that if you say, oh, okay, I did it in 10 seconds versus 11, that's a big deal. When it comes to jump rope, most people don't have a kind of like a pivot point of what is good and what is bad and what the difference is. So if I said to you, oh, in 15 seconds, I did like a 30 pace, that means nothing. If I then said, oh, I cranked out 31, it sounds almost the same, but that could be a huge deal in terms of efficiency. So once you get to a really competent level, you very quickly hit the peak of what humans can do in terms of speed. And interestingly, if you're going to go on Instagram, you're going to search for anybody and you want to look at conditioning and efficient movement, DM me on Instagram. I'll send you some of the Koreans and the Asians who have been training on their teams, because I think the Korean team, their speed training honestly sounds like they've gone to hell and back, because if they're going to do a 3-minute speed competition, which honestly, that is one of the worst things you can do. That's like horribly long. Getting to 60 seconds, you begin to think, what this is a poor life decision. 3 minutes, you're not going to survive. Honestly, it's so much soreness. So bearing in mind that that's the case, because you're trying to go for a max speed, their training sessions will be like an hour of speed, not stopping. So I might do an hour of freestyle on and off, doing a lot of thought processing. They're just bam, 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 bam for an hour. So then when they go and transition to a 3-minute speed, that's a walk in the park for them, because they've done such high volume training on to music. And you can see it from their technique. You can see how clean and fast they are. Do you want me to actually show a video now, like screen share, and show you something? Would that be?
Why not? That could be really interesting.
Let me see if I can quickly find a couple of accounts that would be usable, because there's some seriously, I'll see if I can find some for you. If not, we can just cut this out if that is possible. But there's genuinely so many some really good jumpers.
Yeah, I saw a few years ago in the Guinness World Record, there was I think Korean guy, like 14 or 15, and he was jumping so fast for like 20 seconds. He did maybe hundreds of steps. I don't remember exactly, but it was crazy.
Honestly, some of the jumpers are so fast. I'm gonna try and find one of their teams. I've got to try and find. There's actually this little kid that jumps who is genuinely mind-bogglingly coordinated. He makes me feel like an absolute beginner because of how much coordination he's got. Here we go. Right, this guy. And then let's see if it's on. Okay, I think this will be all all you're gonna need to see. Okay, right. So if will I be able to screen share now? Yeah.
Yes, now you are like the boss of the Zoom meeting, so
Okay, right. So you should be able to see my screen right now.
yes. Oh, it's really young.
Yeah, this is a 9-year-old. This guy is phenomenal. So if I'll show you two videos, and so we'll circle back to speed. So if I show you something that's like a freestyle based, I'm just gonna let you guess at something right now. So he'll do something that's really, really complex.
Wow.
So that's that kind of stuff. So that's the freestyle stuff. So this is the speed stuff that they are renowned for. Okay. I don't know if it's going to play the audio. It's like absolutely phenomenally fast.
They usually spend 1 hour like that, like 1 hour.
Yeah, I've not spoken to them directly, but from podcasts that I've with friends that have discussed their training, they train for like seriously large, strict amounts of time. And I know other jumpers who, from a freestyle point of view, do the same sort of thing. So they'll take like say 8 different types of crosses around the body, and they'll just do 50 of them over and over and over and over again, and then they end up being like some of the best athletes in the sport because they take that periodical volume training and then just apply it to even a creative skill, and then they get such efficient forms of movement.
Yeah, I see. Imagine. And are they professional? Like there is a professional jumping rope. Like can I be a professional jumping rope athlete? So
Yeah. Once you like qualify and you get into competitions, like you can consider yourself an athlete and professional athlete, and you get professional teams. So, for example, in the US, where it's quite big compared to say Europe and the UK, where it's pretty non-existent at this point, they will have different teams that are like historically really significant. They've been around for sort of 30 years, and they'll have team coaches and they'll have organizers, and then they'll go around the different schools in their state or in their area, doing demos to show people what jump rope is, and looking for more people to get into the sport. And then those kids grow up, the ones that become like competitive level go on to becoming coaches as they grow older, and so it's like kind of very passage of time kind of thing. But there's a lot of professional coaches that are spending a lot of time on Instagram, showing everyone their skill and teaching and growing the sport online.
okay. So if you are a jumping rope athlete and you do that much volume during the week, do you have like any recovery tools that you use or other athletes use, or you just eating right and sleeping 8 hours per night?
I haven't spoken to many athletes on their like personally each of their different kind of recovery preferences, but it comes down to this very similar sort of cut and cookie that come down to a lot of sports where rest is going to be one of the most important things. Stretching and mobility is going to come down to one of the next most important things, because it's very easy to become very tight, especially in very restricted range of motion where you're not doing very much range of motion. It's going to be much easier to get a tightness as the tendon seize up. And then obviously eating right. So, although that's a bit of a blanket answer, without talking to anyone specifically, those are the key areas. And some of the coaches that I know, when they do programs, they spend a lot of time in that program explaining mobility and stretching and the importance of that. I have actually one friend of mine, a coach that I work with a lot, who spends more time in his workouts in the stretching part, building his mobility, than he actually does working out. He'd be like, I'm going to go for a 20-minute workout, spend half an hour stretching, because he just genuinely enjoys the body movement, the freedom of movement.
Okay. What about core exercise? Because I know core in many sports is one of the principal muscle not to get injured and to perform. But I don't know how it can be related to just jumping rope, if it's useful or it just
Like
waste.
your core, in like your abs.
Yeah, like exercises like plank, side plank, Russian twist.
So are you asking if there are specific benefits of jump rope to core exercises, or is there certain exercise that you need to do for jump rope? What?
The second one. The second one. Like,
So like I said, because jump rope is very much a lower body exercise, there's going to be not much work happening in the upper body unless you're doing things like push-ups and handstand exercises with those. But even then, they're very strength-based. They're not, volume-based. And if you look at most athletes, they'll have a very narrow, small structure to their body structure, because they're burning a lot of energy. Now, with the core, there's a kind of a blend there where you're not going to get any direct targeted impact on the core, because it's not being under anywhere near enough time under tension or tensile, like metabolic stress, like you would if you were doing crunches, or even if you do like L sits and stuff, where actually there's tension there. Is literally a stabilizer. So just like the glutes, they're going to get some volume, but nowhere near enough. Like, it'd be the equivalent of doing sit-ups, where you're not really going to cause enough volume or enough stress to actually get a six-pack or actually get reasonable amounts of work. However, if you're doing exercises such as leg crosses, where your leg comes up and your knee is above your hip joint, because of your hip flexor, if you're keeping your hips in a neutral position, you're going to get some core activation because of you're bringing that forwards. You've got that posterior pelvic tilt. So in those sorts of exercises, you're going to get a little bit of core work, but even still, you're still going to have to do other exercises to supplement, just like I would for my upper body. So, I'll do some overhead pressing, for example. I'll do bench pressing. I'll do some rows. So I do some core, and it would be not advised for jump rope athlete is going to do a lot of jump rope, and it could be speed or freestyle. A core exercise is probably going to be a good supplementation to their program, like in a lot of other sports, to prevent injury, be stronger.
okay, is there any like best exercise that you use or other athletes use? Is any?
I think it comes down to personal preference, but from the studies that I've read on, if we take jump rope out of the equation now, because it really is independent of the exercise you're going to do, it's having a strong core in general. I found two of the best types of exercises are an exercise where your feet and your hands are as far apart as possible. So like a plank or an extended plank, close to like doing an ab roller. Because the reason they're so hard is the longer you have a lever, the more tension there is on the lever. So the more tension there is, the more stress you're putting on your core, the more it's going to be put under tension. Therefore, the more strength you're going to gain from the exercise. So that's why doing an ab roll where you go out and out gets exponentially harder, because you're exponentially increasing the moment arm and the lever itself. So that's the first exercise I'd use, especially for the rectus abdominis and the center fold, where you actually the core producing a motion where your sternum and your pubic bone are coming closer together. So making sure your hips are in the right position, that's going to be probably one of the best exercises, but also one of the hardest. So adapted versions of that, in my opinion, are going to be one of the but if you had to pick one exercise, that would be the one exercise I would prescribe for most people, with some variation of difficulty, progression. The second one I would personally recommend would be more for like the anterior serratus and the other core exercise, the core muscles around the other parts of the core, especially on the obliques, because they have a kind of a more diagonal line of action versus up and down. So you need something that's going to create torque and torsion that way that you're going to be able to resist. So something like a hanging leg raise, or where you're not raising your legs constantly, you're just having them like in an L sit. Having that means you're having to engage the side because you're trying to make sure you don't twist. If we took that to its extreme, the most effective way would be doing like a one arm hanging core, because then instantly your shoulders are now out of place and you have to use your core to keep your core straight in the most extreme example. So you could do a progression where you start with two hands, you let go of one, do a shoulder tap and grab the other. So you've got like a small period of time where that oblique musculature is under extreme tension, and then you're building up that resistance. So when I used to train at the gym, and I used to do those sort of 3 or 4 hours workouts, if I was doing core in a particular day's workout, those are the two exercises I would put most of my energy into that day. And the hanging leg raise with the alternating arms and holding the arms and doing holds, or doing the extended planks is probably the best name for it, going out as wide as possible. And a lot of literature supports the EMG activation and those specific types of exercises for putting the core under as much tension as possible, because most exercises don't activate the core enough because they're not intense enough, because the core itself is quite small, and it's very hard to put pressure onto it without it just being other legs, other muscles. You know, so if you're going to do like a leg raise, you're more likely going to get fatigue in your hip flexors because it's your legs you're moving, not your core, right? So doing leg raises is almost going to be pointless. That's why a V-sit is so much harder than a knee up, because it's the leg being up there and the core keeping the shape rather than your leg actually being up that causes the problem.
Yes, yes, totally. I was thinking that the main functions of the core, like anti-extension, anti-flexion, and anti-rotation. Anti-flexion is a big one for jumping rope, especially if you do single leg, isn't it?
I mean, to be honest, either way, whether it's one leg or two leg, but the thing that's going to come most is where the legs are at any given point. Because when I'm doing different skills, if we take the freestyle for as an example of the variability of body position, my core does need to be a stable base for balance. So, for example, I can go demonstrate this if this helps. There will be a handful of skills where I might be in this position. Now, all that weight on my legs is going to pull my chest forward, but I need to keep my chest upright. So I need a nice stable core so I don't lose my balance, because I can just hold this position without wobbling. Then I might do the same thing. I do what's called a leg over, where I put this hand under there. And now this is out quite wide. So you might be inclined that I might do this, but I need to keep my hips up straight because my hands need to be like this so I can stay upright. So that way, even all of these skills, my upper body is staying perfectly still because my core's keeping shape, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, totally. Like personally, my favorite core exercise is one arm farmer walk, in which you carry a dumbbell on your arm and you just walk, and you feel like your obliques working a lot.
That's going to literally be the upside down equivalent to hanging from one arm in the exact
Yes.
same motion, because you're keeping that torsion. And so the heavier you can do that and keeping your spine straight, that's actually a really good exercise. To be honest, I don't know if you've spoken to Ross about this specific subject, but it'd be nice to see if he remembers. One of the things that's always stood out to me when I was trained by him, when I did my course, was he said to me, if I was going to give someone one exercise to do just to get them strong and get them fit and get them burning most of their body, he was like, I would prescribe most people just a farmer's walk, because that will obliterate most of your body. So the fact you brought that up, I think if you bring that back up to him, and I don't know if he'll remember or if it still holds true, but I think about that a lot, because I've got a client who, back when I used to train at the gym, and they wanted something that's just going to literally get most of their body working, getting all those sort of things like the obliques working. A farmer's walk is such a good exercise, and there's a reason why farmers look the way they do, because of the nature of their job, right?
Yeah.
So farmer's walk is a really good exercise, and having that adapted version with the one arm, I quite like that idea.
Yeah, and also for the grip strength, if you are able to hold a dumbbell, then even if you are like a heavy jump rope on you, it's much easier. I mean, I don't think you had problem with the grip strength holding a jumping rope, but still it can have benefits, I guess.
I would say actually there's going to be no benefit at all, because if you're jumping rope correctly, you don't actually have any grip. You hold the handles as lightly as possible, as if they're going to fall out your hands, because you want to have as little tension in your arms as possible. So when I'm jumping, I don't mind demonstrating this. A lot more, most people tend to get wrong is they tend to have all the upper body upper tense, so they'll be doing sort of like this. What actually needs to happen is we need to pretend their hands are wet and we're shaking water off. You see how like loose my hands are. Compare it to a runner, where they're not going to be doing this to run. They're going to be just flowing back and forth. So my wrists don't actually have much tension in them, because it's almost like I could let go. All that matters is they just produce a downward motion to get the rope around me. I actually am going to demonstrate this to you, actually, because it'll be useful to show you how a double under with the form of tight, strict holding is the same level as doing a triple under with much more relaxed form, because you're using the same amount of energy more conservatively. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Honestly, I'm used to like all the jumping rope like really strict, because
Yep.
no one told me any.
So honestly, when you hold the handles, you're going to pinch it with one thumb at the neck there. The rest of your hand is literally going to just rest on the handle. So as I come around, I'm literally just beating down very gently. I've literally got such a loose grip that if I literally let go anymore, it just falls out my hand, because I'm not producing the weight of the ropes carrying it around. So if I now jump with like really straight arms, like a double under, it's quite hard. As opposed to if I do a triple, very little energy because I'm actually just doing tiny little circles, very loose on my hands. And that's what allows you to actually move much more freely when you're doing other skills, rather than like whipping in and whipping out, because it's much more difficult to achieve. So I wouldn't say there's only going to be any grip improvement, unfortunately. Quite the opposite, really. You're definitely going to want to do your farmer walks, or your deadlifts to improve your dead hangs. You're definitely going to have to train your grip strength in some other way, unfortunately.
Okay.
However, for a runner or a footballer, if you're thinking about, I want to conserve energy as much as possible when I'm running around the pitch, and you're like really like wasting all this energy squeezing your arms, actually jump rope may help you, because you're gonna be much more looser on your upper body, where you're not needing any energy to happen, versus in your power in your legs, right? So actually, I'd argue for you, that's actually a benefit, but not for the benefit you suggested.
Okay, yeah, totally. Thanks, because I honestly didn't know about this. But yeah, just one question: how do you produce power then in the rope if your hands
Oh,
loose? Uh, like
so it's this is really interesting, because this is something that a lot of beginners struggle with, because it really tests people's proprioceptive skills straight off the bat. Because if someone buys a rope, normally it's too long, so their arms go out really wide to create motion. The problem is, if you put your arm out like this and you draw circles, and if you remember from school, your arm aches very quickly. And people think that jump rope creates like a shoulder workout, when it doesn't, because you only get pain in your shoulder if you're doing it wrong. And that's because you get that feedback from it. You're like, oh, it must be good because I'm feeling it. So what we actually want to do, the sort of second stage when people are learning, is they then think, oh, right, I want to bring my arms in, but their elbows are like level with their body, so they start doing this. And so actually now you've still got the same problem, you just got a shorter version. So rather than doing a lateral raise there, you're now doing a lateral raise there, but you're still causing yourself to have like pain in your arm. So what we actually do is we use our elbow to act like a piston. So it's like the difference between a squat and a deadlift. So at the moment, this is a deadlift because you've got a hinge motion like at the hips, right? What we actually want to do, our wrist wants to go directly up and down, and our elbow wants to flare back to go down, like in a squat where your knees go forward and then your hips go directly down. The hips don't go back or forward. Same motion. And so a tiny flare in the elbow allows you to just beat the drum at the side, boom, 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 boom. And because of the weight of the rope, if you time it right, it's like on a swing where you don't actually have to put much effort into making the swing have momentum, because you use its momentum for its own gain.
Okay, so it's like a squat more than a deadlift.
It's a squat rather than a deadlift with your arms.
Okay,
Weird analogy.
that's a great tip, honestly. Like, if I think about this, it's kind of easy to do it.
Think of it literally like a tricep dip with your elbows back and you're driving down to the end. Because then, going back to what I said earlier, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if you force down enough, your body's going to be able to spring directly up enough.
Yeah, totally. And other than technical performance, physical training, there is the mental part, like visualization and stuff like that. And I think it's really useful for skills. For instance, in football, I tend to visualize maybe before the game, like the first tackle, the first passing, something like that. Do other athletes do something like visualizing some skills that they had to perform the next day or next week?
Yeah, not quite in the same capacity, but the fact that jump rope has a lot of theory behind it, and you can formulate it. It makes it really easy that once you have a feeling for how certain skills are, I can spend a lot of, especially my more advanced clients, I can spend an entire hour just talking to them about jump rope. And then they will go and be able to do those skills because they can visualize what I'm trying to translate with where the hands are around their body, where they relate to each other, where, what body part they're going under. And so they will spend a lot of time visualizing doing a skill. And when I speak to some of my close friends who are like some jump rope athletes, if we're discussing a particular skill that's quite advanced, both of us will discuss it and visualize it before we even pick up a rope. And then more often than not, we won't need like 2 hours of practice for this new skill that we've never tried before, because we have enough visualization to know what we need to do to make it happen, because it's a very visualized internal mental thing that comes down to the skills and understanding where they go, beyond muscle memory.
Okay. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Even because if you practice 20, 25 hours per week, if you can practice like 5 or 10 hours mentally, you you preserve your body from many stress.
Yep.
Oh,
It's literally like music in the sense that once you learn how to read music properly, like read sheet music, and you understand enough about basic theory, you can play scales and arpeggios and you can control the keyboard to a basic level of proficiency. You don't have to have been able to learn how to play any given song because you can read the music and then just play the song in front of you. And you get those really good musicians where they will just sit and they'll play it live as they're reading it, no different to how you speak as you read out loud. Musicians that are really proficient can just do that. And you're like, but I would need to break it down and watch it and learn it and remember it. And that happens with jump rope. I'll have a client, an advanced client or one of my athletes, and we'll be like, all right, we're going to do a swing 180 turn, go under the leg with a TS, stall, and then they'll be able to visualize it and just do it because they understand what's happening with the rope and as it moves around them.
okay. And what are the key points when you visualize? What do you think of, like your hand positioning, feet positioning, feeling? Like there are some key points that you have in mind, or it just like
Yes.
whole feelings about it?
So diving into a little bit of theory to finish us off, there are a couple of ways in which we can describe certain skills. So you have where your hands cross around your body. So for example, I've shown you a couple already. You've got a cross here, you've got a toad, we call it, under that leg, and a leg over under that leg. So that's one way we describe it. You also have the footwork going on there. So certain skills require certain footwork. You'll have where the rope is around you. So you might swing the rope at your side. And you have direction. So you can be jumping backwards or forwards. And you can change direction either by reversing the rope's direction, we call a stall, or by turning your body with the rope remaining in the same path. So that's the first example of that visualization, because I have to turn my body around without the rope's path being interrupted. So I can't pull the rope around. I have to have the rope continue moving the same way as I turn around. And then on top of that, you then have intricacies of different skills where you're moving around different body parts because of the relationship between skills. So for example, if I were going to do a combination of sequence where I start my hands here and I put that arm behind my back, there's specific ways I can actually get from point A to point B and the relationship between those 2 points. So the theory will be understanding, okay, where can I go to get there? Or I could go 1, 2, or I could go 1, 2, or 1, 2, and so there's only so many ways. And so understanding that relationship allows you to visualize and know what you can and you can't do and how we can play around with that.
Wow. There are so many things about a simple exercise such as jump rope.
Yeah, for sure.
To finish, I'd like to ask you a few questions, like actually just one. What are the best free podcasts that you listen to in terms of training and jumping rope that you would recommend to people to listen?
You said podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay, there isn't many podcasts in jump rope. It's still quite a small world. But the one podcast I would recommend is my good friend Nate KG. So Coach Nate KG, so NATE KG.
Okay.
So he's a competitive jump rope athlete and coach who's been doing about 10 years. I've worked a lot with him. If you on my website and you look at some of the resources I've got, you'll see his face appears everywhere on my website because we do a lot of work together for teaching beginners. He has a podcast with probably like 30, 40, maybe even 50 podcast entries so far. And he interviews all kinds of people in jump rope. So sometimes they're national world champions. Sometimes they're like just regular enthusiasts. Sometimes they're other athletes like pentathlons who have used jump rope in their training. So he interviews like anyone who's picked up a rope and their experience. So what is jump rope to them? How has jump rope impacted their life? What they use it for? So he has the equivalent of 3 podcasts worth of podcasts that would be valuable to you, if I'm honest.
Okay. So that's great. I'm gonna put this on description on the video. And the last one, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Still like a coach, or you're gonna progress into, I don't know, TED talks in talking about jump rope and life? I don't know. It just
To be honest, the last 12 months have been a whirlwind, and I felt like 5 years. So I can't even say where I'm going to be in 5. I honestly don't know. I would just like to have coached more people, seen more people pick up a rope, whether that's the ones I manufacture or someone else manufactured. I just want people to be jumping rope, and just to see it get more recognition for everything we've talked about, everything that is benefits of it. Most people that pick it up at the moment in lockdowns have picked it up less for fitness and more for the enjoyment that it provides because of the stress relief and the reduction in anxiety and the coordination and the memory and the amount of things that it benefits them in other ways other than directly cardiovascular. Although we're talking an athlete's point of view, it has a massive mass appeal to anyone else who's not that invested in their fitness to an extreme. So I just want to see more people pick it up for both reasons.
okay. Okay. Yeah, just to mention, you did like during the first lockdown, you raised cash for the NHS.
Yes, yeah. So I to date have raised probably about £1,000 in just taking any money that I've made from specific colors of the ropes. So I made like an NHS color rope, which is like three white beads, three blue beads back and forth. And any profits from those ropes go straight to the NHS. It's a local hospital in the Medway. So because I've got a few friends who have partners who are nurses and stuff that work there. So I wanted to make an impact somewhere that I knew had made an impact rather than some kind of the whole country as a whole. Because £1,000 is £1,000, but I wanted to make sure it made a difference in a place where
Okay.
I could tell it made a big difference to them, which was really nice. We had a couple of supermarkets donate some like toiletries to them as well, which is what we raised the money for. Because back when the start of the pandemic, PP wasn't as much of a problem. They kind of got into gear of producing it, and toiletries is where they really suffered because of the long shifts and all the PP they're wearing. That ended up becoming more of a hygiene issue, and so we raised the money to help them pay for those sorts of essentials.
That's a great idea, honestly. So yeah.
Thank you.
So Chris, it's been an hour. Thanks a lot for your time, and hopefully you're gonna be still a coach in 5 years and coaching not only UK but all over the world.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah. See you. Bye.